What is up, guys? Jordan here with the Deck Box, coming back to you tonight with a new deck profile from the upcoming Ultra Prism set. The deck we're going to be looking at tonight I think is quite interesting because it does kind of a little bit of everything. So it can snipe, it can take big 2-prize knockouts, it can take 3-4 prizes in a turn, it can devolve, it can lock your abilities, it can do all these different things. It sets up fairly quickly, and it's kind of tanky. So to me, that seems like it's kind of a full package. I think it could potentially be a good deck coming up in the future. And the deck I'm talking about rather is Glaceon GX, Decidueye GX. And I don't think, at least I haven't heard many people talking about those two paired together. I've heard a lot of Decidueye Leafeon. I've heard Glaceon Waterbox, or just these combinations. I've heard Leafeon with Lurantis promo and stuff like that. I've heard all those combos. I have not heard Glaceon paired with Decidueye. And to me, when these cards first came out, it was honestly the first thing I saw. I was like, oh, sweet. So it's like a better Ninetales GX in Glaceon, because with Ninetales, of course, you snipe for 50, typically in the Ninetales Decidueye deck. And that's it. You snipe for 50. You didn't get to use its big attack or anything. But in the deck I've constructed, it allows your new Ninetales to be a better sniper, because it does 90 to the active, it does 30 to a bench, so you're spreading 120 there, 150 with a choice band, whereas with Ninetales you capped that at 80, and it was to one Pokemon at a time. There was no multiple spread or anything like that. So to me, it just seemed like it made sense. And I know that, yes, we had Umbreon before, and it didn't get played with it a lot, but Glaceon has two things that Umbreon did not have. First, it has the ability. The ability on this thing is insane. So you're able to lock all of your opponent's EX or GX abilities, but it does not lock yours. As long as Glaceon is in the active, your opponent can't use Lele, they can't use their Decidueye, they can't use their Leafeon to heal, they can't use their Metagross, they can't use their Solgaleo stand-in, or whatever it's called, not stand-in, but you get what I'm saying. They cannot use any of those EX or GX abilities, as long as Glaceon's in the active. So, to me, that's kind of like, in a way it's better than Garb, in a way it's not, and the reason I say that it is because you don't have to guarantee a tool, you just have to have the Pokemon, which is very simple. You use the EV evolution, the Energy Evolution EV, to evolve straight up into Glaceon. Boom, turn 1, your opponent cannot use their Lele's. So that's where it's definitely miles and miles better than Garbodor. The only problem is, obviously Gizmo can get around it, whatever, you can do what you need to do. But the whole point is it slows you down early game. You're allowed to set up then and do your thing. In the Decidueye mirror match, you're able to Feather Arrow, they can't, while you're just taking knockouts. For the early game, they can't set up. For the mid game, they can't set up. For the late game, they can't finalize what they need to do because they can't use their abilities. They can't get Lele for Gizmo for game. So you're able to lock them out of these things, and the whole time you're using your abilities, you're sniping them, and it's beautiful. Now, the way that it's not as good as Garbodor is it doesn't shut down all the abilities, but that's good because it doesn't shut down yours. It'd be great if it shut down all of your opponent's abilities, non-EXs and GXs, and then of course EX and GXs. That would be ridiculously insane. I think it'd be too broken then. But just that ability in and of itself is great to be able to shut down your opponent's abilities. The other thing that Glaceon has that Umbreon did not have is this GX attack, and the GX attack does 50 damage times all the damage counters on your opponent's active Pokemon. And to me, that pairs beautifully with Decidueye. Decidueye, you hit 2 Feather Arrows, they have 40 damage on them. You're now swinging for 200 with that GX, 230 with a Choice Band. Why is that a question? Why is no one looking at this? Why are we not playing this? Why is this not a strong consideration? You can one-shot anything just from 2 quick Feather Arrows, and I know that's not technically one-shotting because you're having to use Feather Arrows to get there, but you're doing insane amounts of damage. even for like another consideration is with the snipe, you're doing 90 to the active, 30 to a bench. If you're up against one of these big basic decks, you're swinging for 30 to their bench. So maybe you knock out their active after, after two snipes. You knock out their active after 2 snipes. You get a hold of one of their bench Pokemon. You use that GX attack. You're swinging for 150 when they have 30 damage on them. You're probably knocking them out. Or Choice Band, you swing for 180, you're hitting 210. So that takes down your Zoroarks, that takes down your other Glaceons, your other Espeons and Leafeons, all the Eons, all these stage 1s, Lycanroc, it takes them all down. So to me, it hits so many good things. It's great for 2-shotting, it snipes, it devolves, it slows your opponent down, and that's something I think that Decidueye has never had before, where it gets to slow the opponent down. Typically what happens is Decidueye has to set up as quickly as it can, and if Decidueye does not get set up, then you're dead in the water. Nothing you can do. You have to get your Decidueyes. That's the main part of whatever deck you're playing. And I will say that it is kind of a main part of this one, but not so much that your entire game is dependent on it. You can still do what you need to do with Glaceon. You can still slow your opponent down, so it doesn't matter if you're not setting up very quickly, your opponent's also setting up very slowly, so you're kind of evened up. But if you do set up properly, then you're taking off. Erica and I actually messed with this at League tonight. I built some proxy decks of a few different decks for the upcoming set. Played them out. This deck won every single time it played. Every single match, this deck won. Now, I mean, that could be the other decks weren't that great, whatever, bad matchups. I will tell you this. So, Erica built the Decidueye Leafeon. She had net decked that from another YouTube channel, and she played that version. I played this version with Glaceon. This just wrecked it every time. There was no way around it because they couldn't use their Feather Arrows, they couldn't heal, they had to Guzma, and that deck only played 2 Guzma, which to me, that's just really bad right now. You need at least 3, if I'm being honest. So she couldn't do anything. It stopped her on using her Lele because she couldn't set up immediately. I didn't even have my Glaceon set up to slow her down, but it was a few turns later I did have it up, and she still was kind of behind it. She wanted to bridge it. She couldn't, or she couldn't Sycamore. She couldn't do anything because she couldn't use her Lele. This deck just did amazing. And then to top it all off, she said, I want to play Night March because she's going to Dallas, and so she wanted to test it out. I said, fine, pull out Night March. Let's test this out against it. This beat Night March. And it wasn't that she had a bad setup. She had a great setup. She was rocking. She's getting through all of her cards and stuff. It took things out the way it needed to. I was able to block up her Shamans from doing anything, from drawing through cards to dig through her deck. I'm able to snipe with the Decidueye, obviously take easy knockouts on Pumpkaboos and Joltix, and then a Feather Arrow and Glaceon attacking a Shaman takes down the Shaman, and if there's a Joltik on the bench, it takes down the Joltik. It's taking 3 prizes at once. So, I mean, that shows you the inherent strength of the deck. Obviously, small sample size tonight, playing through, 5 or 6 games, but this just consistently did what it needed to do, and it took out the opponent every time. So, what we're going to do now, I have the cards IRL. We are going to profile this list. I will warn you in advance. There's 2 proxy cards, 3 with just plain white paper, nothing special. Cynthia's, Blend Energy, and Glaceons, of course. But you'll understand what they are. I didn't have a chance to get the fancy colorful ones or anything like that, but I do have them there. So we're going to profile this deck, and I encourage you, go build it. I mean, there's only 3 cards in it from the new set. So it's not hard. I think you print off like 9 proxies, and then the rest you should have in your collection, and test it out. Because for me personally, I'm starting to test for St. Louis, and it's a little tough whenever the new set comes out a couple weeks before a tournament. So I'm trying to get as much testing in IRL with the proxies that I have. So make these proxies, especially if you're going to St. Louis. Test this deck out, test other decks out, and be well prepared for that. So now, guys, we're going to hop over to the playmat camera, and we're going to profile this video. Okay, guys, now we're hopping over to our playmat to I guess, profile this deck. I do want to apologize in advance. As I mentioned originally, we do have a couple proxy cards in this list. Obviously, you'll know what they are based on the picture. And then on top of that, I do apologize for the odd angle. Working on our basement right now. Once we get that all set up, we're going to have awesome camera angles. We're going to have perfect little studio set up. But just a little fair warning. But now what we're going to do, we're going to hop into this Glaceon Decidueye list and show off the Pokemon and items and all that stuff that goes into the deck. So starting off, we are going to go through our Decidueye line. So of course we do play 4 Rowlet. It's very critical that we set up as many Decidueye as possible. So playing the 4 to get those set up is only makes sense. Then we do have 2 Dartrix, and then we have 4 Decidueye, of course. This will be a very, very important part of our deck. The main thing that we're focusing on is Feather Arrow to do 20 damage to any Pokemon on their side of the field that we want to. This is great to set up some awesome knockouts and hit the exact right numbers with our Glaceon, because of course some of the new stage 1s that are coming out have only 200 HP. All the evolutions have 200 HP. I believe Lycanroc has 200 HP. So what's great is you can Feather Arrow and then hit for 90, and they're automatically up to 110. The next turn you can put a Feather Arrow elsewhere and let Glaceon finish things off with the 90 to close it out for an even 200. So that is our Decidueye setup there. We do have the option of the attacks as well. We will really only use those if we come into a matchup where we need to hit for weakness to hit grass. That's really the only reason we'd ever use his attack, and we'll talk about how we will do that later. Next, looking at the, I guess, newest addition to this deck is we do play 3 Eevees to get our Glaceons up, and we need to make sure that when we play this list, we play the Energy Evolution Eevee, so that on turn 1 we can lay down a Water Energy and evolve Eevee straight away into Glaceon, shut off our opponent's GX and EX abilities. They can't use Tapu Lele, they can't use Lycanroc, they can't use their Zoroarks. Glaceon basically comes out and says, you know, all those fancy expensive cards that you have, yeah, well, I'm going to shut them down. And that's why we need to make sure to use the Energy Evolution Eevee to get this set up. And then we play 3 Glaceon GXs, and there's those beautiful proxies I was talking about. Still in Japanese, still black and white. It's what I had. But anyway, I'll walk you through this card real quick. Obviously, most of you probably can't read Japanese, but it is a stage 1. It's Glaceon GX, 200 HP, water type, and the ability, I don't quite remember the name. I think it's like Frost something. But basically, it shuts down your opponent's EX and GX abilities as long as Glaceon is in the active. So that's really what makes this card so great. And what's really good is the rest of the card is really decent too. I think if any other part of this card wasn't very good, no one would even look at this card because you're not going to stick something in the active that can't do any damage. But yeah, so you can shut down abilities. The next attack for a water double colorless, you swing for 90 to the active and you hit the bench for 30, which is great because a lot of the decks that we have right now are using these small basics. They're setting up with their Bridget. So 2 of those and you're taking down a bench Pokemon, or you're potentially setting up a nice knockout for later in the game. Either way, you're spreading 30 damage. You're bringing everything into KO range. So we do play 3 of those, and like I said, turn 1, the goal is to get 1 of those set up in the active. Your best starting Pokemon in this deck is Eevee to get things going there. So those are our 2, I guess, headlining Pokemon for the deck. They are the kind of the flag bearers, so to speak. Then we do play 1 Espeon EX. This is obviously kind of a staple in most Decidueye lists. You know, once you spread enough damage, you can devolve your opponent's Pokemon and take knockouts that way. Eric and I were talking about this. I don't think I'm going to cut the card, but I will say this. It's not as important in this list as it typically is in other Decidueye decks. It seemed like when we were testing this, Glaceon was always able to take 2 prizes because, you know, we had our Decidueye set up. We're swinging for a couple Feather Arrows while also pinging the bench and the active with our Glaceons. So we're taking 2 prizes typically. So to devolve just seems kind of silly whenever we can go out there and take 3 knockouts and win the game. But this is definitely good in a tight spot, or if it wins you the game, or if it takes more prizes than what you would be getting with one swing. It's all about your board state. So that's really dependent on when you'll use Espeon EX. As I said, it's not as important as it typically is, but it is important. And then lastly, for support Pokemon, we do have 2 Tapu Lele GXs for that Wonder Tag ability. And what's great, as I mentioned with the Glaceon, it does not shut down your abilities. It only shuts down your opponents. So while you're able to use your Tapu Lele, sorry about that glare there. Anyway, while you're able to use your Tapu Leles, they cannot use theirs. While you're using your Decidueye, they can't use theirs. They can't use Bloodthirsty Eyes. They can't use Zoroark. You're just sitting there kind of rubbing this in their face saying, hey, I've got my abilities up online. You have yours set up, and you spend all these resources to get them set up, but you're not allowed to use them because I say so. So those are the Pokemon there. Let me get these out of the way. Moving on to our supporters. So obviously, with this being a Stage 1, Stage 2 deck, we do need Bridgets to set up. So we do play 2 of these. The goal turn 1 is to get the Tapu Lele, to use the Bridget to set up. I will say I only got to use this a couple times during the game tonight, but the deck still got set up. If I didn't have the Bridgets or didn't have the Lele or whatever, I had a Cynthia or an N in my hand. I was able to get what I needed, and I had enough support to be able to get my Pokemon out within a turn or two. Never got donked, so that was nice. Next, moving on, we do have 3 Gizmo. This is obviously going to be to take the knockout that you want, maybe to stall something active. Another thing to consider, they are going to be Gizmoing around you constantly in this game because they want to use their abilities. Let them waste their Gizmos. Use yours in important times, whether it's to shut down their abilities or to take knockouts. Because I mean, like I said, they're gonna blow through there so fast. So if you manage your resources properly, then that should really work wonders for you. Next, moving on to our draw supporters. We only play 2 Sycamore in this list. I was even tempted to cut it even lower than that since we do have other new draw supporters that I think might be better. But we're going to continue to test and kind of see how we want this deck to evolve. Then moving on from there, we do play 4N. Obviously, we want to be able to shuffle our cards into our deck to preserve the resources and not worry too much about losing anything. So we do play 4 of those. We can also disrupt our opponent that way. And what's great is this disruption is so much better now with Glaceon than it may have been before, because a lot of times you're ending and there's a lot of Zoroark out. So they don't care if you end them down to 1 or 2 cards. They're going to get more. They're really not concerned with it. So it's much more important and helpful in this list than it is in some of the others. Moving on, this is one of our other proxies. We play 4 of the new Cynthia card. This is a great card. It's essentially a reprint of, this was before my time, but Professor Oak's New Theories, or PONT is what they're calling it. You shuffle your hand into your deck and you draw 6 cards. This card is awesome. Getting to play with it tonight was just so great. Every time I was able to just be like, I'm going to shuffle my hand and draw 6, and it's not going to mess with my opponent's hand, which was good in a lot of cases because it would have helped them if it was an N instead. And so to have that option between an N or a Cynthia, it really helped to I don't know, just kind of lay out your strategy exactly how you wanted it to be. It wasn't this, oh, I have to play an N because I don't want to discard this stuff. It's like, well, do I want to play an N and disrupt my opponent? Or maybe it won't disrupt my opponent, maybe it'll help my opponent, so maybe I can play a Cynthia. So having that option was great. And it was constantly where I had one of each in my hand, and I just had to pick. So really, really awesome card. When the new set comes out, get your play set. And when I say get your play set, I mean get your play sets, multiples. You're going to use this in every deck that you play, pretty much guarantee. Awesome card. I'm hooked. I'm hooked on the card for sure, for sure. Moving on from there, we do have our item cards. A lot of typical staples in this, but we're going to run through them anyway. So of course we do have 4 Ultra Ball just to search out any Pokemon in our deck. We're going to be looking for our Decidueye. We're going to be looking for our Lele. We obviously won't have to use these on Glaceons if we play our deck appropriately, but a great card to be able to set everything else up. Next, as far as evolution, we only run 2 rare candy, and I know that seems really odd because we only run 2 Dartrix, and typically you want to run kind of a heavy count between the two. You're not typically in this list getting all 4 of your Decidueye out. You're getting 2 to 3, which is, I mean, that's a good number. So I felt like you didn't need that many rare candy because Glaceon's kind of able to do its own thing because you can slow your opponent down so much. You can stall something in the active and hit it a couple times to take the knockout because they can't lay for Gizmo to get out of it. So 2 so far seems good. I may switch up the counts between that and Evo Soda, but we'll see how it goes. Which brings me to my next card, Evo Soda. We play 3 of these. This is, to take... In fact, looking at it now, I think that was silly. It should be 3 too. But anyway, right now it's 3, and it worked well because there were times where I didn't get my Glaceon with energy, or I used a different type of energy, but I needed to get my Eevee evolved the next turn, so I used Evo Soda. So I may keep it with 3. Maybe I'll do a 3-3 and try to figure out another slot. Maybe cut my second Sycamore. But was able to take me from Dartrix to Decidueye multiple times, and then like I said, if I was ever in a tight spot and wasn't able to energy evolve, I was definitely able to use Evo Soda to get my Glaceons. Next, whoop, cards are going crazy on me. Next, we play 3 Choice Band. Typically, you're only going to be attacking with your Glaceons, nothing else, so 3 seems like an appropriate number to be swinging for 120 as opposed to 90. This helps us to be able to take 2 shots on things like Decidueye and potentially other big beefy attackers, and that way whenever we do have a Choice Band attached, we don't have to use our feather arrows on what our Glaceon's attacking. We can put our feather arrows elsewhere, kind of spread them on the field, and then let our Glaceon take on the active. So you can be hitting in multiple places. So you can feather arrow a couple places, hit the active, snipe another one. So you just, whoa, whack the camera there. So, sorry. So you're literally spreading on the whole board. It's not just 1 or 2 Pokemon. And using Choice Band allows us to do that a little bit more effectively to take better knockouts. And last for our items, we play 2 Field Blower. There's not a ton of garb out right now, but if there was, we're covered for it because this deck does require a lot of abilities. And with garb being a non-EX or GX, we can't shut off its ability to shut off our abilities, so we're stuck with it. So like I said, that's what that's there for. On top of that, this deck doesn't run any stadiums of its own, so it can get rid of stadiums that may be messing with you, maybe a parallels out there really causing problems for you. You can shut that down, or obviously Choice Bands, Float Stones, whatever the case may be, you can get rid of those and slow your opponent up a little bit. Sorry guys, I know that camera got kind of out of whack whenever you hit it there. And then lastly, moving on to our energy, pretty simple counts. We will start with the basic energy. We run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 water energy. We run kind of a heavy count of this because, I say heavy, it's not that heavy. We run the 6 count of this because we want to try to guarantee the turn 1 energy evolution. So that's why I run 6 water energies. I know a lot of the Leafeon Decidueyes are running like 7 grass to try to hit that turn 1. 6 so far seems to work pretty well. Like I said, if for some reason we don't hit it turn 1, we do have Evo Sodas. We obviously have Ultra Balls to search our Glaceons out. A lot of times what I found is we had Glaceon in our hand if we didn't have water energy, so it worked out. We just had to be a little bit more patient, didn't quite hit the turn 1, but most times we did. Next we do play 4 DCE, and this way we can just, finalize our attack, 2 energy attachments, and we're able to swing for 90 and 30 snipe to the bench. And also we could use Decidueye's attack, and of course you're looking at this and saying, well, there's no grass. Well, we have a solution to that. So the third proxy of the deck, we have Blend Energy. It's kind of tough to see all 3 there. So this is essentially Rainbow Energy, but you don't take the 10 damage. It acts as one of these types of energy, water, grass, or fire. So it's a rainbow for those 3 types, but you don't take the 10 damage. So that is what's really great about this card. So we included 2 of those in case we ever did need to attack with our Decidueye. then we could play one of these down and a DCE and be swinging with Decidueye. So, and the reason we use blend as opposed to 2 grass is because that way it kind of acts as 2 extra water energy in case we need one for our Glaceon to do its thing. It really helps things out quite a bit. Allows us to do that first attack, and then of course the GX attack to swing for 50 times the amount of damage to your opponent's active, which I'm just not realizing. I don't think I covered what that did. Yeah, I skipped right over it. Sorry. Now that we're at the end of the video, the GX attack, 50 damage times the amount of damage counters on your opponent's active. I think I talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the video, but not so much during the profile. You hit for big numbers, and of course, if you need this later in the game and you weren't able to energy evolve, this becomes your water energy. So I think you can make great use of those blend energies as well. Again, with this new set, I pick up your playsets of that. I pick up your playsets of Cynthia. I'll probably make a video here of the playsets that I would pick up of the new set. That way we can just get them all into one. And that way we can make some awesome decks. So guys, I really hope you have enjoyed this deck profile. I was a little hesitant to do it because, like I said, my proxies don't look the best, but I figured it was useful information to get out to you guys. So like I said, go online. I use ProxyCroak. Really good, really simple to print these out. They print you pages of proxies, and you're able to start testing with some of the new cards. So I strongly encourage you to do that. Build these new decks, test them out, because if you're like me, St. Louis is what, 4 or 5 weeks away. It's just around the corner. We need to be ready for it, and this is how we do that. So build your decks with proxies. Let me know if you build this one. Let me know what you think of it. So far so good for me. I'm going to keep testing it as well as others, and like I said, I encourage you to do so as well. So guys, if you have enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like at the bottom there, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. We're always looking for subscribers. We love having you guys around. We love the comments. We love the community that has grown here, and we really appreciate you sticking around. So guys, as usual, I have been Jordan with the Deck Box, where we want to know what is in your box. Have a great night, guys. We'll see you next time.